Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. It is an amazing day. Let's wait for those tubes to connect themselves because we've got some serious legal and political business to attend to today, and we're glad that you're here and with us. Before we jump in and zoom in on the stories, let's do a quick roundup and a preview of what's coming in because we've got some big stuff. First of all, Matt Gaetz is looking pretty good. Some might say victorious. Some might say he won because the news story today is that the House committee, they met. Remember, there's been all this back and forth about Matt Gaetz and this ethics report that the House committee has in their possession and whether they were going to release this stuff to the public or to the Senate. And they had a big meeting today. Everybody was paying extra close attention. And I got a bunch of clips in reaction to this, but they've come out now. And apparently the committee is going to be keeping the Gaetz report under wraps. So that's good news. Democrats must be flipped out about it. But I want to go through this one more time because this is going to be an ongoing issue. And Matt Gaetz posted before he was selected to be the Attorney General of the United States of America, when he was facing this in Congress in September of this year, before the election even occurred, he responded to these allegations. And he says that they are a smear job without any merit or credibility at all. And so we'll go through this. We'll make sure that this is on the record and explain what his take is from Matt Gaetz's perspective. A lot of people in the media smearing him every day, abuser, trafficker, so on and so forth. Sick allegations to make against somebody. It's not a joke. It means that you actually did the things you're accusing him of, which is sick. But he's come out, he's responded to it. So since he's going to be in the middle of confirmation hearings and more, we're going to get up to speed on what his position is and then carry on. We've also got updates about 3 hours ago, fresh out of the oven, what was happening at the hearing. And we've got House representatives that were meeting to talk about the ethics report in the House, but Matt Gaetz was also being shown around the Capitol by J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect. And apparently, things went pretty good over there. So the House ethics report, the Senate was meeting with Gaetz, and I got a bunch of stuff queued up on this. So we also have this report from the Washington Times, which has one of the most obnoxious websites of all time in the world, has this article saying that even Lindsey Graham and others are saying, make him at least have a hearing. So that's good news. Then we'll ask about recess appointments because Fox News is reporting on this and hearing about, well, what happens if the Senate doesn't confirm him? What happens if he is rejected because they make this into something that it isn't? Can he be recessed appointed? And what is that looking like? Talking to some people on Capitol Hill about that. Then a bunch of clips from Stinky Eric Swalwell, who made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. We got this guy and Luna. And then from inside the Capitol building, CNN was tracking down the Congress people as they were racing around trying to figure out what to do about this. So we got Graham and others, lots of reaction, including from Marsha Blackburn. And I've got a clip of our demented president. This is what he looks like there on the tarmac on the global stage. So a bunch of stuff on the Gaetz Attorney General issue, which is a very important issue. So we're excited to get into that. Then we're going to turn our attention to this bathroom saga. It's never ending. And now we're getting some very clear guidance from the Speaker of the House because he has now said that the bathroom madness is coming to an end in Congress. And he released a press release talking about who can use what facilities. He came out yesterday, clarified for us, what is a woman? It's very complicated business these days for some folks, but not for Mike Johnson. He knows what a woman is, and he's going to explain that to us soon. So the transgender ban has now been launched, and we've got reaction to that. People in Congress are the newly elected representative, Sarah, who is the subject of this battle, doesn't seem to care too much about it, and we'll talk about it. But we've got reaction. Okay, a lot of the media is very upset. And so they went after Nancy Mace, and they asked her, how come you hate transgender people? How can you be such a bigot? And she said, oh yeah? Well, we're talking about biological women. biological. All right. And so that's what she's doing in Congress. And so we'll see. She's introduced some bills because what's interesting is Congress is willing to protect their bathrooms. But the question is, will they protect your bathrooms? Are you going to be alone in your bathroom with some weirdness going on? Who knows? And so she introduced a bill, and we'll read through it. We'll see what she says and see if this goes anywhere in Congress. But some interesting things happening there on Capitol Hill. And as always, we got Jasmine Crockett, who's being extra Jasmine Crockett today. And we'll see what she said in Congress. Then we're going to ask what's going on with the border because we had a verdict in the Laken Riley trial. And I think many people were expecting this, but it is nice to see it come to somewhat of a conclusion. But the individual charged, now convicted and sentenced, was convicted of all crimes across the board. It was 10 of them. Trump commented on this. I've got the verdict being read out in public. 10 counts, murdering Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. Rest in peace to her and peace to her family. Oh my gosh. So we'll listen to this clip. And then we'll get some reaction. We'll see what the New York Times said about it because he's getting life sentence for that. And it was a gruesome killing. I mean, it's a really, really horrific story. And we didn't spend a lot of time on it here because it's just pure pain. It's all it is. Unnecessary, pure pain and psychotic behavior. But it's been enabled by our own government. So it's been a sick story, but we're getting some closure on it. But today, there were also a bunch of questions about the illegal alien problem, including from Xavier Becerra, the current Health and Human Services Secretary, the same guy the Democrats love, even though he's got no medical background other than being the Attorney General of California. Who cares? Same thing Kamala was. We saw what that position entails. So no one cares. But he's asked some questions about his health and human services since he needs to develop health. Question is, does he care about the health of 300,000 missing kids who are absconded and taken out into Lord knows where, thanks to Kamala's wide open border and the Democrats' wide open border? So questions from Andy Biggs in Arizona. We've got Representative Tiffany asking some questions, and then Chip Roy also jumping in, asking questions from Xavier Becerra, Health and Human Services, who's going to be replaced by RFK Jr. And so that's what we're getting into today. And we're going to zoom in, go through some of these filings, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And so, my friends, excited to do that and jump into it with you. Welcome. What's up, Jennifer? What's up, Shane, Michael, Stefan? Great to see you. I see Ad Boa's over here. Dan is in the house. Paige is joining us. Very nice to see everybody. And thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for becoming members, for liking this video, and for sharing the show with a friend or family member so that they can come join us on our next live stream. All right, now, let's get to it because we've got some business here, and we're going to get started with the story, the big story on the day. Matt Gaetz victorious. The Democrats have been salivating to get their hands on the ethics report that was in possession of the House of Representatives. We know that Matt Gaetz was a House member for quite some time, but resigned because President Trump, President-elect number 47 coming in, is now going to be moving to have him become his Attorney General, which means he resigned from the House to go through the Senate confirmation process. And as a result of that resignation, the jurisdiction of the House over him is gone. So they do not get the report, traditionally speaking, according to the rules. But today, Matt Gaetz was at Capitol Hill. He was hanging out with J.D. Vance, going around the Senate, meeting senators. But the House was doing something different. They were having a conversation and a debate. Should they release the report? You've seen many clips. We've shared a ton of them here of senators, Democrats, screaming, salivating. Well, the report, trafficking. We saw the woman from The View had to read a legal note because she was rambling off so much about how Matt Gaetz was this trafficked pedophile guy. And turns out that's not in evidence. So you can't just say that stuff about people and get away with it. But they met in Congress and the ethics committee was there. And here's the big headline. You've read it already. It's on the screen. It says House Ethics Committee is going to keep the Gaetz report under wraps. Womp, 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 womp. Sorry, Democrats. They tried really hard to make this into something. It's nothing at all. Matt Gaetz has already debunked this. We have an entire letter from him that he sent out before he even became the nominee for the Attorney General's office, where he explains all of this is a racket. It's all fake. It's a smear job that's no different than the Soviet Union. And it's not any different than what they did with President Trump. They said he's an insurrectionist. Turns out that's not true. Said he stole classified documents. No, he didn't. Said that he falsified business records. No, he didn't. He paid his lawyer. That he Bergdorfed a woman in Bergdorf's. Come on. We saw the trial. All of it's fake. So they did the same thing in the story. And Matt Gaetz explains his intercourse in this letter. And so we'll come back on that. But here is what this says that happened today. The House Ethics Committee met on Wednesday, that's the day, but did not release its report on Gaetz, resisting significant pressure to release its findings after President-elect Trump selected him as AG. Ethics chair named Matt Gaetz, a Republican from Mississippi, told reporters after the 2-hour meeting, he said, "This is not an agreement by the committee to release the report. We don't have an agreement to release it, so it's not coming out." The panel met for roughly 2 hours behind closed doors. They took multiple votes, said a source familiar with the situation, including one to release the report as is, and that failed. The development caps off a week of speculation about this. Are they going to release it or not? We have to get it. We can't confirm him. Matt Gaetz isn't qualified. With lawmakers on both sides of the aisle pushing for its publication. Mike Johnson vigorously advocated for keeping it a secret. Trump's team charged ahead with Gaetz in spite of all this drama. Now, the committee is scheduled again to meet on December 5th to, quote, further consider this matter, according to a Democrat on the panel. All right, so they're going to try to bring this back. Shortly after the statement, Wild offered remarks on behalf of the Democrats, saying it would be inaccurate to take Guest's statement to mean that there was consensus on the committee, saying that the vote was taken and it was along partisan lines, right? The Democrats want it released, the Republicans don't. They say, well, I can't really talk about this, but I will say that a vote was taken. Okay, good, because that's all you do basically is vote. That's your deliverable. As many of you know, this committee is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, which means that in order to affirmatively move something forward, somebody has to cross party lines and vote with the other side, which happens a lot, by the way. We often vote unanimously. Wild said that she made a separate public statement because Guest betrayed the process by disclosing our deliberations within moments after he walked out of the room. Details from the report could only make their way public, or could still be made public, or to senators, even if the ethics panel never moves to release it. And that's been our position on this. It's like, come on, someone's going to leak it. Or they already told us someone hacked it, remember? Some of the evidence and testimony reportedly on file with the committee has been leaked to ABC News. Yeah, by Democrats. And a lawyer for the 2 women who he says spoke to the ethics committee has been publicly saying that he told the panel they saw Gaetz having intercourse with a minor at a party, which is like, gosh. Now, Gaetz has vigorously denied the allegations, accused a former associate and convicted fraudster of plotting with others to lie about him to get out of his own jail sentence, and has noted the DOJ didn't even charge him. One Democrat is already seeking to extract the findings in another way. This representative from Illinois, his name is Sean Casten, said in a statement that was released as the panel met, he says, I'm going to file a privileged resolution on Wednesday to force the committee to release its findings, triggering a vote of the whole House within 2 legislative days, if the committee did not do so. Now, such a move was made back in '96 when Democrats tried to force the Ethics Committee to release findings on Newt Gingrich. The allegations against Gaetz are serious, they said. They are credible. The House Ethics Committee has spent years conducting a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of it, I'm sure. The information must be made available to the Senate to give us our advice and consent. Now, they could vote to release it later, but for now, they haven't. We have regularly scheduled meetings between now and the end of the year. And I think that, the way that this is going to work is there's a lot of pressure right now because it's new and hot. It's primacy and recency, right? It's what's first and last. And for a while, the pressure will subside. Then when Matt Gaetz is in front of the Senate again, then it's going to get hot. Well, give us this report. They're going to say, we already decided not to release it, right? So they'll put some pressure and it'll be too late to release it, and then it'll fire back up again. But they're going to continue to meet. Maybe they'll release it later on. How could it be released before it's finished? Well, that's something we're going to talk about, or it's not even finished. And someone else said there's another reason I have about releasing unfinished work. So we can't do that. Now, it was a years-long investigation. Matt Gaetz has already responded to this, and so let's jump to that. Matt Gaetz posted this. Now, this is a fun one to go back down memory lane on, because this is what Gaetz posted officially. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz, because he is now resigned, posted this back on September 26th, month before the election, wasn't in consideration to be the Attorney General, dropped this thread, said, this is my position vis-a-vis the Ethics Committee, and he dropped some evidence that I have assembled into a PDF file that we can parse through and mark up now together, which we will do. This is Matt Gaetz's letter to the Committee on Ethics explaining why he is not guilty of any of these smearful allegations and why, after a thorough investigation, he should be completely vindicated, and why this should not move forward against him in the middle of this process. It's been investigated by the DOJ, and they declined to move forward. So here's what he says to the U.S. House. Matt Gaetz writes, all right, Chairman and Ranking Member, your investigation into me has devolved into a political payback exercise, devoid of adequate due process, riddled with leaks, now seeking deeply personal information from me that's no business of Congress to ask about my life. He says it seems the fix is in. The committee has refused to establish an investigative subcommittee, as is customary, perhaps because doing so would have time limited this investigation long ago and diluted the influence of those on the full committee who are seeking revenge. Now, the committee has, during the course of its work, released public statements to cast me in a negative light. Gaetz says this was understandably observed as unusual. Now, most shockingly, the committee's own membership has participated in funding a recent political campaign against me, which utilized the very smears that the committee now seeks to revive and phony validate in this investigation. I am being investigated and judged by my political opponents. This is Soviet. Well, it's America now. This investigation exists to do what the voters of my district won't, to remove me from office. The committee's own membership tried to remove me from office via the election. That failed, so this is the next iteration because Gaetz is too strong for them. Your correspondence on September 4th asks me, Congress is asking Gaetz, whether I have engaged in any sexual activity with any individual under 18. The answer to this question is unequivocally no. You can apply this response to every version of this question in every forum. You ask whether I have taken drugs illegally. I have not used drugs which are illegal, absent some law allowing use in a jurisdiction of the United States. I have not used illicit drugs, which I consider to be drugs unlawful for medical or over-the-counter use everywhere in the United States. Okay, so that gives you like a huge range of drugs that he may or may not have taken. You could, in that category, it's a Venn diagram. You'd include any prescription drugs. You'd include any marijuana, which is legal in a lot of states. You'd include even hallucinogens or the psychedelics that are legal in certain states. So it's broad. And doctors and others prescribe all sorts of things now. So broad category. But illicit might mean something like, cocaine in the White House. That might be a problem that the DOJ and the Secret Service covered up and the Congress wasn't inclined to investigate. Cocaine is not prescribed by a doctor. All right. You can get it in different versions, but I'm talking about street cocaine. All right. It's like, Rob, it's like they don't prescribe methamphetamines. Oh, yeah, well, kind of they do. So it's a fine line, right? It's very fine line here. Kind of. They prescribe the amphetamine part of it. They just kind of knock the meth off the top. But it's very complex. So it's interesting. Now, I wouldn't consider that to be disqualifying, right? I'd like to know what most prosecutors are on, what types of antipsychotic drugs they're on. That should be, I mean, if we're going to test Matt Gaetz and that's going to be disqualifying, what kind of antipsychotic drugs is Jack Smith's team on? Just so they can function throughout the day without their TDS over consuming their bodies. What, I don't know. Mega doses, though. So, but you can, judge that on for yourselves. Now, you further asked for the basis for my claim of exoneration. This is Matt Gaetz's letter. On July 10th, I provided the committee dispositive evidence, which means this is enough to decide this case, of my innocence by producing a, quote, smoking gun, contemporaneous jailhouse writing documenting the plot to frame me, which includes both Joel Greenberg and his victim. 2 former federal agents from HSI, Homeland Security, and the FBI interviewed the inmate who revealed this plot, who we'll call the jailhouse informant, and their memo is attached as Exhibit A, which we'll read through today. The jailhouse informant was in jail with Joel Greenberg when they were in Orange County, Florida. Mr. Greenberg told the jailhouse informant, so this is somebody who knew Gaetz, told the jailhouse informant that he planned to lie about me having intercourse with a minor to reduce his own prison sentence. I'll give you something if you reduce my penalty. You see this in the movies, and it happens in real life. It happens all the time. In fact, if you have somebody, if you have a client who knows something a lot about a lot of things, you might use that. You might, hey, we want to do a free talk with you, and he'll just answer all your questions, Mr. Investigator, as long as you give us something back, right? So it happens all the time. And he's trying to work his deal out. So what else is juicier than a congressperson having intercourse? Interesting. Now, Mr. Greenberg informed the jailhouse informant, so he's talking to this other dude who's ratting on him, that Mr. Greenberg's victim would be willing to adopt Greenberg's lies in hopes of getting paid. So the person that they're saying Matt was having intercourse with is in on it. I have provided, Matt says, the committee written evidence that according to plan, she later sought that money. You're kidding. On information and belief, Greenberg's victim has enlisted her longtime friend and her roommate in this endeavor. So these 2 women who said, I was doing it and I saw him doing it, and this jailhouse dude are all in on the scheme. He says, on information and belief, and if you think this is fanciful, okay, there's written letters down here and there's text messages. So we'll look at it coming up. Saying, on information and belief, Gaetz writes, Mr. Greenberg had arranged for his victim to meet with an attorney of Greenberg's choosing to orchestrate a plan to get Greenberg's victim to lie about me, Gaetz. A verified Florida civil lawsuit that this committee knows about alleges that Greenberg texted another person that he was paying for his victim's attorneys. He's like, I'm hiring this lawyer. Just like Jean Carroll had her attorneys compensated and paid for when she was introduced to Roberta Kaplan via George Conway. Right? Everybody's paying for everybody else. A copy of this text message is attached to Exhibit B. So Greenberg texted somebody saying, I'm paying for this person to lie. Or I'm hiring, didn't say that specifically, but I'm hiring their lawyer. Here's what the text message looks like. It says, Joel Greenberg, last seen, looks like a WhatsApp text. Says, Roger Handberg, assistant U.S. attorney needs to get fired. I'm having to pay for blank blank to retain a lawyer. They contacted her and are wanting her to talk. She doesn't want to talk to them. Likely Venmo was the link. I need help with this. Uh-oh. So this lawyer is saying this attorney, this U.S. attorney, is coming into the DOJ and is asking this victim a bunch of questions. She doesn't want to talk to them. So help me tell them to stop talking to her. Get her lawyered up. The DOJ's investigating. They're saying, wait a minute. Did Gaetz have intercourse with you when you were 17? So her lawyer's telling them to lawyer up. Now you might say, well, you should never talk to the DOJ, right? But she's the victim of a crime. That's supposed to be the DOJ's job, is to represent her. Why does the lawyer not want her, or why does this person, Greenberg, not want her talking to the feds? And why is he paying for the lawyers to protect her from talking to the feds? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So Gaetz continues. She should be running to the feds. I was a victim. I got statutory yard, and you need to help me. Now, this text occurred prior to Greenberg's admissions to the jailhouse informant and further corroborates his testimony. A copy of the letter from the jailhouse, the guy who was in the cell with him probably, to my attorneys is attached. We'll come back. Now, this wasn't the first or even the second time Greenberg coordinated false smears of others. He was initially indicted for attempting to falsely smear a teacher at a local high school as a PDF file. So this guy's done this before. Thereafter, he was separately found by federal law enforcement to have possessed CP that he intended to use to frame his own attorney. On information and belief, the DOJ never charged Greenberg for the CP because it would have understandably eviscerated Greenberg's credibility against Gaetz. So the DOJ's like, that's fine. It was okay to have that CP because you were using it to frame Matt Gaetz or your lawyer. And obviously, if they charged him, then his claims against Gaetz would look ridiculous. Now, the DOJ leaked false allegations about me to the New York Times. They investigated those claims rigorously, cajoled witnesses to conform to their narrative, and then ultimately knew they did not have a chargeable case. The DOJ did everything they could to get Gaetz. The very people who have lied to the Ethics Committee were also lying to them. On information and belief, so they're lying to the Ethics Committee and the DOJ, saying, on information and belief, the DOJ investigated allegations regarding violations of the Mann Act, trafficking, child trafficking, obstruction, illegally owning a marijuana business. They investigated Gaetz for taking bribes, campaign finance violations, violations of the federal drug laws. None of these investigations, says Gaetz, resulted in charges against me, and with good reason. I am innocent. I believe the Biden Justice Department leaked to the New York Times in 2021 to impact the behavior and the testimony of witnesses. Now, my basis for this belief is a recording of Joel Greenberg from prison, wherein he claims the DOJ told him that the New York Times piece put him in a, quote, a golden position. A copy of this recording can be given to you if you want it. Now, I serve on the House Judiciary Committee, says Gaetz, and the Biden Justice Department loathes me. We know, because he's obliterated them in hearing after hearing. I ask the most penetrating questions of their top officials. I frequently embarrass them publicly. Attached as Exhibit E. The combination of the unnatural bias of the Biden DOJ against me, their leaking of false allegations about me, and their ultimate decision not to charge me, even though they hate my guts, is a clear exoneration, as is widely observed by others in Exhibit F. Now, an additional basis for my claim of exoneration, this is Matt Gaetz, is the conviction and the criminal sentence of Stephen Alford, who attempted to shake down my family based on the very same false claims that the committee attempts to refurbish for political payback. Mr. Alford was working on this criminal scheme with former DOJ official David McGee. Suspiciously, the New York Times story published the night before Mr. McGee was to receive a 7-figure wire transfer from my family at the direction of and in cooperation with the FBI was to cement his criminal culpability. Mr. McGee was never charged. Wow. Your September 4th correspondence at Ethics Committee to me reveals your investigation is more than just about enforcing House rules, okay? And your requests are uncomfortably nosy. You asked me, writes Matt Gaetz, signed here, you asked me whether I've had sex with a list of adult women over the past 7 years. Who do you think's on that list? You think AOC's on that list? They have that one video where they're looking at each other. I don't know. They were both unmarried. The lawful consensual sexual activities of adults are not the business of Congress or speculating live streamers. Neither is a detailing of medications I have taken under the color of law. Yeah, let's see what these Congress people are on. How many antipsychotics are the Congress people on, honestly? Why do you need so many different medications to fall asleep at night? Is it your conscience? The question about my sexual history reveals a sinister motive of the committee to harm me and those who have any association with me. I want to know everybody you've ever had sex with, Matt, and what kind of drugs were you on? And what are their phone numbers, too? To date, I have voluntarily produced tens of thousands of records, and I've answered many of your relevant questions over several months. But asking about my sexual history as a single man with adult women is a bridge too far. I will no longer, I had so many jokes, so just be, nice about it. I will no longer voluntarily participate in this regrettable abuse of the committee. Now, I understand that the committee has issued but not served a subpoena for my testimony, and I explicitly reserve all of my rights pursuant to House rules and the U.S. Constitution. And so that is the story, right? It seems from what Matt Gaetz says here that a lot of this has been missed in the public reporting about any of this. They just say, oh, sex trafficking. Okay, the person who's initiating the claim has a history of making false claims against other people. That's a key witness. And there's evidence that the person who is the originator is paying for the lawyers of the victims and doesn't want them to talk to the DOJ. So it's just incredible. Now, here's a memo of the interview. And Matt Gaetz submitted this in his X post thread. And here's what he said. After the text messages came in, he says, the committee's star witness is named Joel Greenberg. We just learned about him. I gave the committee a smoking gun jailhouse writing documenting the plot to frame me. He's done this before. Here's more on this story, saying on May 7th, blank, blank, blank was interviewed by investigators regarding his knowledge of a conversation he participated in regarding Matt Gaetz. This is an investigator writing a memo. Regarding his knowledge of a conversation about Gaetz, the interview took place at a jail where this person is currently an inmate. Investigators presented a handwritten letter to blank and asked if he wrote and or sent this letter to Gaetz' attorney. After reviewing a copy of the letter, blank acknowledged. He says, yeah, I am the person who prepared the letter, and I had someone send it to the lawyers. We'll look at the letter in a second. Blank met Joel Greenberg on blank in a corrections van that was transporting prisoners from locations. There was one other individual in the van with blank and Greenberg. Blank described the third individual as Indian looking, but did not know his name. Blank described the individual as an American Indian who was older, late 40s, with long hair. Blank had not seen the Illinois inmate, as mentioned, and they were separate. So the informant started a conversation with the Indian-looking inmate and Greenberg by asking why they were there. What are you guys in for? The Indian-looking inmate stated that he was there for a violation of probation. I didn't register. He had been to prison and served time, and he said that the informant had also served time at the same facilities. Oh, yeah, I've been there before. So then Greenberg stated, he says, well, I was out on bond, but my bond was revoked because I violated his bond conditions because I went outside the district. Oh, man. He said that he was stressed because he's being held in solitary confinement. He did not state why he was in solitary. The informant explained to the Indian guy and Greenberg that he was also on probation and new firearms charge. Although the new charges were dismissed, they said, yeah, we're going to hold him on his probation violation. So after about 1 hour in the holding cell, the informant and Greenberg, this guy is making claims against Gaetz, Greenberg opened up to the informant. He said, man, how is it in here? You've been doing this a lot? What are federal prison conditions like? Greenberg stated he'd never been in trouble before and wanted to know how other inmates treated individuals who cooperated. Like, if I cooperate with the feds, are they going to take me out, man? What's going to happen? The informant told Greenberg, hey, don't worry, man, because most people that cooperate are sent to low-level facilities where tons of people cooperate, all right? So just chill. Greenberg stated he was arrested for fraud and using money he stole from the government to purchase cryptocurrency for gambling. Not an honest fella. And we call those crimes of moral turpitude, right? You might have a crime of passion, you're in a fight, you punch somebody or something like that. But if you thieve, if you steal, if you connive, you're being dishonest. And those are a little different category because it shows you've got some really ill intent. So fraud, stolen money. Greenberg stated he was a tax collector, earned a salary of $150K a year. Added authorities came to his home, searched him for frauds, and seized his laptop. Greenberg stated his real problems involved an ex-sex trafficking case where authorities found a receipt on his laptop for money he sent to an underage female victim. Greenberg, wow. So that's what they're saying Gaetz did. Found a receipt that he sent to an underage female victim. All right. Authorities were now threatening to charge him with trafficking of an underage. 10-year mandatory minimum based on what they found. This guy's freaked. He says, I can't do 10 years. I asked Blank for his advice. Blank told Greenberg, he says, well, there's nothing wrong with cooperating. I mean, yeah, of course you should cooperate. It's the only way to reduce your sentence, especially if there's a mandatory minimum like that. I mean, it's trafficking a minor. You're not getting out, man, so you better just cooperate. Greenberg stated he was only concerned about his young daughter. He was not worried about his child's mother because she knew he was playing the field and he was cheating on her. Man, with minors? Man, this dude's bad. So this is the guy who's bringing the claims against Gaetz? Interesting. The informant believed that Greenberg opened up to him because he needed someone to talk to, and Blank was soon to be released. Greenberg continued to open up to Blank and mentioned the name Matt Gaetz. Blank recalled Gaetz's name because he shared the famous last name of Bill Gates. Greenberg stated that when the federal agency investigating found out it involved Gaetz, they ran with the case, and the story was leaked to the New York Times. They found this guy in trouble. They saw Gaetz's name in proximity. Oh, great. Told the Times, we're investigating this might be Gaetz trafficking because they're sick. Greenberg asked investigators not to reveal the story so he could make controlled calls to help with his cooperation. So I might have, he's like, what can you give him, right? Well, what do you have? You have anything you can give him? Maybe. What about it? Well, Gaetz, this Gaetz thing, it's weird. Investigators asked Greenberg to make controlled calls to get others to incriminate themselves. Greenberg told Blank, he said, quote, the crazy thing is, all the prosecutors and investigators are Democrats, and they only wanted him to accuse Republicans because they did not like them. Smoking gun is right. The guy who is a major crux of this entire claim is saying, yeah, they were wanting me to go after Republicans, so I was. Greenberg stated that the prosecutors wanted information on Gaetz, a former lobbyist for President Trump, and at least 5 to 6 other Republicans. Greenberg told prosecutors he could link all these individuals to trafficking of an underage female because he, Greenberg, arranged it. Yeah, he's like the new Epstein. Greenberg stated that none of it was true, and he was making it up to reduce his sentence because he's freaked. Greenberg told Blank, although it did not happen, he has a way of connecting the dots, okay, to make it appear it did happen. He would use actual travel dates for the individuals in question to fabricate the events and the encounters, although they never actually happened. Make it all up. Greenberg asked this informant if he knew who Gaetz was. Do you know who I'm talking about, Matt Gaetz? He said, no, I don't. He said Gaetz was a congressman from Florida. He said Greenberg admitted Gaetz was one of the individuals about whom he fabricated a story that he arranged to have intercourse with an underage 17-year-old girl. When asked if the underage would corroborate the false story, he said, yeah, she'd go along with the story because she would later file a lawsuit and she's going to get paid. So Greenberg told the informant he was meeting with prosecutors and agents to cooperate against Republicans. Greenberg learned that both he and the informant had the same judge. Now, he was later taken from the holding cell by U.S. Marshals and returned an hour later. When he got back, Greenberg stated he met with the prosecutor and investigator and gave them all this information on those Republicans. The informant asked Greenberg, he says, "Why are you making up information on your colleagues?" Greenberg stated, "I got to do what I got to do because they would make things up on me if it were me in there, me on the outside." So the informant was asked by law enforcement to cooperate against his defense attorney, redacted, because he represents several drug dealers too. She also had sexual relationships with her clients, and the government believes she's now involved in criminal activities. Wow. So the defense attorney is getting nabbed too. She's having sex with her clients and she's involved in crimes. Well, that defense attorney's having a bad time, all right? Oh, man. Whoever that is, she's in trouble. Specifically, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms Special Agent Sharon Ring targeted Dickerson. Special Agent Ring had executed 2 search warrants on this person's home. Wow. All right, so we're kind of lost track of who we have because it's all redacted, but blank was arrested during a traffic stop in so-and-so for possession of a firearm, released on bond, later arrested for a probation violation at Dickerson's condo. So this might be the informant. The informant was asked if he ever authored any letters to law enforcement or prosecutors. He denied writing any letters to prosecutors, but stated he provided the information to the individual who wrote it on his behalf. He declined to give the identity of the person who wrote and sent the letter. After confronting blank with 2 separate letters with similar handwriting, blank recanted his statement that he did not write the second letter. He stated he did write the letter. However, he denied being a heroin addict, as he stated in the letter. Blank never intended to cooperate against blank, but wrote the letter due to the pressure that Boggs and Ring were putting on him by putting him in isolation for 6 months. He says he stated he was not seeking anything in return for the information. Blank insisted he only wants to do the right thing and hoped someone would do it for him if someone were lying about something which he may have done. End of report. Okay, so he's like a good Samaritan informant. He's like, this dude's lying about all these guys. So he wrote a letter and then wrote a second letter. And so we've got credibility concerns with everybody. But here is what one of the letters looks like. He sent this back April 5th, 2021. And his letters are the same. He says, "I would like this letter to reach the legal team of Gaetz. First, I want to be very clear. I'm coming forward with this information voluntarily. I'm not seeking anything in exchange, nor has anyone promised me anything. In fact, the reason I waited this long to reach out after my conversation with Mr. Greenberg is because I wanted to make sure that my own court proceedings was resolved. My name is blank, and I'm currently a federal inmate at the Orange County Jail. On blank, I was transported from the county jail to the federal courts for a hearing. 2 other inmates were also transported in the van with me. One of them was Mr. Joel Greenberg. All 3 of us was having small conversations while inside the holding cell awaiting for the marshals to escort us. The other guy was an Indian guy who did not engage in the conversation too much. Mr. Greenberg was next to me, and the other guy was sitting across the room. Mr. Greenberg didn't know too much about the federal system, and so he was asking me questions about prison, that I've been there before. As the hours went by, he started confiding in me about his situation. He told me that he was back in jail because he'd violated bond and that authorities had searched his house and took his computer. He spoke about how he was making easy money, buying bitcoins and gambling on sports, using budget money besides the yearly salary he's being paid as a tax collector. He said he makes about $150K a year. He also said that authorities found on his computers records that he did a money transfer to the 17-year-old girl and they were charging him with trafficking of a minor. Now he wants to blame Gaetz. He said that the investigators had leaked the charges to the media prematurely, which kind of messed him up with his cooperation plot. He said he told investigators to get the story pulled from the newspapers because he wanted to make controlled calls to other politicians to try to get them to incriminate themselves, but he said it was too late and that people started to kind of stay away and be skeptical of him because of the media coverage of the charges. He asked a few questions from this guy and stated that he can't do 10 years in prison. I stated back to him that I understand. He's not a street dude, and I'm not here to judge him or to look at him no other type of way. After I told him that I wouldn't judge him, he loosened up a bit and got comfortable. He told me that he has blank, Judge Presnell, He further told me that he was not here for court that day. He was there to debrief on some Republicans because they wanted to tell on all Republicans. He said that the prosecutor and the investigators that he's cooperating with are all Democrats and they don't like Republicans. Mr. Greenberg said he's also a Republican. I laughed and asked him a sarcastic question. If he was now a Democrat, are you now a Democrat since you're telling on Republicans? He said, no, I'm still a Republican. I just got to do what I got to do. All right. He's like, I'm not that much of a monster. Mr. Greenberg said that he fabricated numerous events and told investigators that he was the one, please hold, that he was the one arranging for the girl to hook up with other people, and further stated that they would believe him. I asked him what would the girl say when they questioned her. He said that the girl probably would go along with it because she don't know any better. He said she might think that she can file a lawsuit afterwards. Mr. Greenberg asked me if I know who Matt Gaetz is. I told him I do not. He said Mr. Gaetz was a congressman and stated that's one of Trump's people. He said that he told investigators that Mr. Gaetz is one of the people whom he arranged for the girl to sleep with. Mr. Greenberg also said that he told investigators that he also arranged for the girl to sleep with another person who's a former lobbyist for Trump, in which I do not recall the name of that person, is what he said. Mr. Greenberg asked one, in my opinion, how much do I think they would cut off his time if he could help the feds bring those people in? I told him that might not even do 3 years of prison, given that he's never even been in trouble with the law before. Yeah, man, might knock your 10 years down to 3. I don't know. I asked Mr. Greenberg an honest question as to why he was making stuff up about his colleagues. He simply responded that if they were the ones in his shoes, they would fabricate stuff about him as well, just to get their time cut. So I would like to say, Mr. Gaetz team, that I am not a Republican, nor am I a Democrat. I do not follow politics. I just think it's totally wrong for Mr. Greenberg to try to ruin the congressman's life and reputation based on fabricated allegations. The Middle District of Florida is biased. The prosecutors allow people who've been indicted on federal charges to lie on you when they don't like you and want to take you down. It's true, especially when it's sex-related crimes. They know America frowns upon those types of charges when you're a public figure. I've seen it done to celebrities and athletes all the times. I wouldn't feel right within myself if I just sat back and not shed light, yes, on my conversation with Mr. Greenberg, knowing that his intention is to try to tarnish other people's lives and their careers, saying, in exchange for a possible time cut from the government. I must admit that I do not know what Mr. Gaetz or Mr. Greenberg daily lives consist of. I can only speak on the things that I was told by Mr. Greenberg during our conversation. You're more than welcome to verify camera footage from federal court holding cell the day of March 23rd, 2021. So it's on video, he says. We're in there talking. And this guy was lying through his teeth about Gaetz. And the most corrupt prosecutors in American history that are currently in charge of the DOJ were salivating, lapping it up. Couldn't be more excited. They don't care if this guy's true or not. It's the same thing they did with Cohen and Carroll and the rest of them. So Matt Gaetz is completely vindicated on this. And you can see he shared this some time ago before he was even the U.S. attorney nominee. None of it was good enough for the committee. They want to just smear him. That's what this has all been about. And so we're happy that they, at this moment, are not going to be releasing the report. Now, senators also met with Matt Gaetz, and they're excited about getting him to a hearing. They said senators, in addition to this fight over the ethics report, they left a closed-door meeting with Gaetz on Wednesday. They said, just get this man to a hearing. Let's go. They said the J.D. Vance and Gaetz met with GOP senators to discuss the nomination. Two senators, Murkowski and Collins, the squishy Republicans, have cast serious doubts on whether he'll get confirmed. The House committee is not going to be releasing the report, but the senators had a good time. Lindsey Graham, at least, urged his fellow senators to let the hearing process play out. He said that when they met, the meeting was very good. Graham said, I'm committed to allowing the process to go forward in a manner consistent with past practices and fundamental fairness. It's not going to be a rubber stamp, nor will it be driven by a lynch mob. And so we'll see. Now, the question also comes from Fox. Will we have recess appointments here if the Senate can't get the job done? They're contemplating it, and some Republicans are hesitant. Some Capitol Hill Republicans are starting to deliberate. Can Trump do this if the Senate stonewalls him? Trump argued earlier this month that, yeah, they can do it. The Constitution does grant the president authority to appoint cabinet officials when the Senate is out of session during a recess session. But what happens if they do some funny business? What happens if the Senate objects to being out? The passage in question would allow the commander-in-chief, quote, on extraordinary occasions to convene both houses and either of them, and in the case of disagreement, he may adjourn them and then do the recess appointment. So if Johnson proposes to take the House and the Senate out of session and the Senate resists, okay, there's a disagreement. Trump comes in and says, you're in recess to settle the two, and makes his appointments. And so we've got some reaction to this, Republicans and Democrats weighing in. Here's what it looked like in Congress today, right after they got out of the hearing. And we know that at this moment, the hearing has resulted in a decision to not release the report, which is, as we saw, a smear job. Here's this from inside the Capitol.
Have you heard from Trump or his team at all about this?
Not heard from President Trump or any member of.
There are two options, he said.
Well, no, what I said is I view a public release versus a conversation about transmittal to the Senate. I think those are separate conversations that the committee needs to discuss.
Is the report actually done at this point?
The report is not complete.
It's not.
That's correct.
And so how could you possibly release it if it's not done?
That is something that we will be talking about today. And that's another reason I have some reservations about releasing any unfinished work product.
How far would you say it is from its completion?
It has not gone through the review process.
Wow, it's like not even close.
Now, Democrats say that the report is essentially ready for release. So there's a disagreement between members on this panel. There's concerns about Democrats. The Republicans are trying to bury this report and prevent it from becoming public. But ultimately, in order to get this out of the committee, we'll see if they actually have a vote today. It's unclear if that will happen. If that happens, it would require one Republican to join with Democrats on this committee to release it to the public. As you heard from Michael Gaetz right there, he told me there are two options. There could be a public release, or they can transmit it to the Senate Judiciary Committee themselves. That is, those are among the issues they are debating in this critical meeting, as the Gaetz nomination very much hanging by a thread, at the uphill climb of sorts to get the votes to be confirmed because of the.
I don't think it's hanging by a thread at all. I think that as the days go by, people are going to learn more and more about this. It's more Democrat hystericism. All they're doing is the same thing they've always done, and nobody believes them anymore because they've cried wolf too many times, and there are no wolves. They are the wolves. This is Stinky Eric Swalwell, made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, almost forgot, and he is here saying that the report must be released.
This person who becomes our Attorney General has to have credibility as they go after counterterrorism cases, as they go after money laundering, as they go after public corruption. The public needs to know when they investigate and indict somebody that it has the weight of the United States government and the people behind it. And if that person has all of these storm clouds hanging over them, and we think, okay, you had, your dirty laundry hidden by your buddies in Congress, the American people won't take it seriously. And then we start to look like other countries where you don't have faith in the people who lead us, like China, like Russia. This person.
Dude, you got thrown off the intelligence committees because you were sleeping with a Chinese spy, talking about credibility. What? And then you buried that whole story. Don't want to talk about that one. Where is Fang Fang, Eric? Where'd she go? She back in Beijing? Credibility from Stinky Eric. Now, here's another one from another politician over on CNN.
So do you think that Matt Gaetz would make a good attorney general?
It doesn't matter what I think. The president-elect of the United States thinks that he'll make a good attorney general. Look, the president has every right to choose who he wants to choose as attorney general. I have made no secret. I'm not a fan of Matt Gaetz. I wasn't a fan of his when he was here, and I think that he was disruptive here in the House of Representatives. But the president also thinks that things need to be shaken up at the DOJ and the FBI, and Matt Gaetz has shown, if he's shown anything, that he is a disruptive force. And so, you know, the president has faith in him. Now it's up to the Senate to determine whether they want to affirm that nomination or reject it, and that's how it goes in our country. And so I expect that the process will be followed, and that we in the House should facilitate the Senate in their deliberations and how they determine whether he should be affirmed or not.
All right, so very bland answer, obviously about as unenthusiastic as you can get about Matt Gaetz being dragged across the line in support of him because President Trump supports him and the American people do want to change. We don't want another Bill Barr coming in. No thanks. So this is Representative Luna in the House, and here's what she said.
This is the same testimony that was, again, dropped by the DOJ and the FBI because these people were not credible. And I will say that for the senators that are coming forward and stating that they need to read this testimony, let's look into these people's stocks portfolios and how they're becoming multimillionaires off of $175,000 a year. The reason why people want outsiders, the reason why people are not buying this Gaetz smear campaign, and that is exactly what it is because of the fact that they understand that there is a two-tier justice system. You know, you mentioned earlier that I do think the DOJ is corrupt. Absolutely. When I find that they're giving special treatment to the Attorney General, that he doesn't have to testify to Congress, yet if any single other American does that, they go to jail, that is absolutely government corruption. True. But when you're then talking about cabinet picks, you're talking about an ethics investigation. I mean, I'm pretty sure Matt Gaetz has also been investigated for misuse of campaign funds that were also dropped. So the fact is that Matt Gaetz has, again, time and time again, stood up to the swamp. Frankly, I know him as a person. I know his family. And I've been able to be privy to the conversations behind closed doors of members looking forward to this leaked ethics report because they know that it's going to smear him. I'm not going to state who the members are, but what I will state is that that type of behavior, putting this forward to the American people, smearing Matt Gaetz's reputation, and then also undercutting the credibility of President Trump, who, again, the American people trust to lead this nation, I'm not going to play that game.
She's not playing that game. And look at this guy this whole time. He's like, dang, man, she's crushing right now. I can't even compute. I can't even respond. She's so good looking. Well, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to respond. All right. So here's another exchange from Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is out, and he's on team Matt Gaetz for a while.
Nobody should be disqualified because of a media report.
It's more than it's an investigation.
Investigated by the department he wants to lead.
Bipartisan ethics investigation.
And they didn't proceed forward. Nobody should be disqualified.
Punks. That's right. Very simple statement from Lindsey. What's our president say about all this? Does he even know where he is? Let's find out. All right, good. Got him in the car. That's the president, and he's making his way, I guess, back around the world. Meanwhile, Marsha Blackburn is on team AG Matt Gaetz.
Martha, you know, when I met with Matt Gaetz and Vice President-elect Vance today, I asked Matt what his expectation was, and he wants to be able to have a hearing. He says he will answer any question that anyone asks him, and we have to keep in mind, President Trump has a mandate from the American people, and he has pushed forward with nominees for these positions that will help him to carry out that mandate. I'm going to support each of these nominees. And Matt wants to have a hearing, and he wants the opportunity to answer all of those questions. And I will add, I asked him what he would do if he were to be confirmed as Attorney General for the United States, and he was very specific. Dealing with the weaponization of the DOJ is at the top of the list. Dealing with the illegal immigration and the border security issues. Dealing with fentanyl. All of these are items on his to-do list.
And we're excited to see him get into action because those are very important issues. We spent a lot of time talking about them. Now, rounding out is a lot of the reaction from Congress is Harriet Hageman. Remember, she's the woman from Wyoming who obliterated Liz Cheney, another corrupt individual who will come under the scrutiny of A.G. Gaetz.
I've worked with Matt Gaetz for the last 2 years on the Judiciary Committee and the Weaponization Committee. He's an incredible, brilliant legal mind, and he is someone who I think would go in and stir up the DOJ, which is what we need. We have uncovered a substantial amount of information of how the Department of Justice and the FBI have been weaponized against the American public. And Matt Gaetz has been instrumental in exposing that and trying to hold people accountable for the decisions that have been made. And I think that's really why they're attacking him and trying to derail this nomination, because they recognize that he's someone who's going to go into the Department of Justice and actually do what needs to be done, which is clean out a lot of the dead wood, if you will, and also root out the corruption that we know has been going on. What we saw with the Hunter Biden laptop, what we saw in terms of how they treated Hunter Biden, the amount of money that they gifted to him by refusing to prosecute him for the tax evasion that he engaged in with the money that he was receiving from foreign countries. Matt Gaetz is somebody who's going to expose this, and I think that that's why they're attacking him.
Yeah! Let's go, Harriet. That was very nicely done. So, nice list there. A lot of stuff that we've been covering. Matt Gaetz has been asking questions about it for the last many years. And so now he'll have the power that Merrick Garland has to go and actually investigate the people who have perverted our justice system. And so congratulations for the moment to Matt Gaetz and the Republican team for standing firm by their man, by their candidate, not succumbing to obviously what is a smear job. And if you know somebody who hasn't seen or gone through this report yet, thanks for sending them this video so they can see what this is all about, right? You never see this stuff in the Washington Post. They don't say Matt Gaetz is accused of trafficking, but the guy who did it accused other people, was in jail for fraud, had admitted a bunch of this stuff was fake to a jailhouse informant. They don't tell the people about any of this. And so Matt Gaetz is standing firm, standing strong. We'll be here continuing to cover it. All right. And my friends, thank you for being here for that segment. Now, we're not done yet because it was a big day in Congress where Matt Gaetz has exited, but there's Congress is being Congress. And today, a bathroom victory. Here's the story. Congress bans bathroom madness in the congressional building. Are they going to do anything about your bathrooms, or is it just the Congress bathroom? Let's see what Mike Johnson shared with us today. He says he has released a statement on women's only spaces in the U.S. Capitol, writing, Speaker Johnson issued the following statement regarding the use of single-sex facilities throughout the Capitol complex. Says all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and the House office buildings, like bathrooms, changing rooms, and locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of that biological sex. It is important to note that each member office has its own private restroom as well. And unisex restrooms are available throughout the Capitol anyways. Women deserve women's only spaces. All right, so there's a lot of bathroom options. Every congressional room, they have their own bathroom. It's good to be a congressperson, I guess. So what is this in response to? Well, there was a newly elected individual who made their way into the House of Representatives, and it's causing some people to ask questions about where is this person going to go pee-pee. So Mike Johnson institutes what Axios says is a transgender ban. And this is because we have a new person in Congress. You can see there was a statement from this person called McBride, who is the subject of this debate, who is a transgender person who is now elected from Delaware. And we'll come back on that story. But as this person got elected, they asked Speaker Johnson about this, and he's been trying to figure out what to do about this, to come up with the right politically correct answer. And here's what he said in response to a very impromptu press briefing on what is a woman.
Leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman. Okay. And a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
All right, so he comes out, makes the statement, turns around, and gets the heck out of there because it's an interesting thing to be talking about. And very political answer, right? Man is a man, woman is a woman, but we treat everybody with respect. And I think that's a right way to approach it. And he clarified it. So we've got that answer. Now, a lot of people unhappy about this on the left. They say a House Speaker is banning a trans woman from using the Capitol women's bathrooms after the first openly trans lawmaker is elected. Okay, so Kate Murphy having a conniption fit over this whole thing. It says it comes after Nancy Mace introduced a bill to ban incoming representative called Sarah McBride from using female bathrooms at work. Okay, there's a picture of Sarah McBride and Nancy Mace. And it's interesting, the two photos that they picked. They picked Sarah, all regal, newly elected congressperson. Nancy Mace gets the derp face. Derp face. So you can see how this article's going. Got it. So Mike Johnson banned transgender people from using their own bathrooms designated for biological sex. We read the statement. They say they have their own bathrooms. They have their private bathrooms. The bathroom restriction comes as Sarah McBride becomes representative-elect. Mace introduced some legislation. We'll read through it. When asked by a reporter about this, they got into it. Nancy Mace is saying, we want spaces for women, all right? Born with vaginas. And shouldn't have to acquiesce on that. Mace, Green, and others misgendered Sarah McBride? Oh my gosh. And so it's going to continue to be a battle. Now, this is what Sarah McBride posted on X. It says, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms, okay? I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down costs that are facing families, which I think is the right political maneuver, is to just say, I don't know what they're even talking about. It's fine. I got my own private bathroom. Just take it off the table as an issue, because otherwise the Republicans are going to turn it into a giant issue. And it's a losing issue for them, as the election told us. So I would imagine that the Democratic Party is like, can you just use your private bathroom, please, for the foreseeable future and not make a big deal out of this? So that's what this statement is. Now, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight about Delaware. I'll follow the rules as outlined by Johnson, even if I disagree with them. Now, I have a question about this because I think I might have a little bit of a different take on this. I mean, this is Congress. We're not talking about schools or young kids. These are adult Congress people. And I did some research on this, and I wanted to see how many women are in Congress, and of those women, of all the women in Congress, how many women in Congress are Democrats? And it's most of them. Okay, so if you do the math on it, there's about 127 women in the House of Representatives out of 435. So 30% in the House are women. Of those 30%, 93% out of 127 are Democrats. Okay, so about 3/4 of the women in Congress, in the House of Representatives, about 70%, 75% are women. So women are Democrats. 3 to 1. It's a lot. So if they want a transgender person in their bathroom, that's better for the Republican males. Right? Just say, yeah. just have them in your bathrooms, not our bathrooms. So it's Congress. So could they vote on it? Would the Democratic women, this is a question that I have, would these 93 Democratic women, how would they vote on this issue? Would they vote to have the transgender individual in their bathrooms with them or not? It's Congress. Can they vote on their bathrooms? Yeah, because, I mean, do men really want a person who doesn't want to be in there and who is in the belief and the mindset that they are a woman in the men's bathroom? Bros? I don't think so. So it's a confusing situation. Apparently, they're going to figure it out in Congress. I don't know if they're going to take a vote on it or what the deal is, but it's a strange dynamic. Everybody, I guess it's Congress. They can vote on it. Everybody can make their voices heard. We live in a representative democracy, I guess. We'll just see where that one goes. So Sarah will not be using the female bathroom in Congress, and Nancy Mace is filing some legislation over this. Yeah, it's complicated. All right, so here they got into it. So Nancy Mace is out there. She's got legislation that's coming down the pike, and there's two different bills. One is for the women's spaces in Congress. The other is for women's spaces elsewhere, I guess in high schools and other locations. So it's a very confusing issue, and trying to figure out where these people can go, because we certainly don't want separate but equal, right? We tried that, and that didn't work out that well. And now we have separate but equal bathrooms, one for women and one for men. And now we have unisex bathrooms, which I think is not good enough to have unisex bathrooms. And then we also have private bathrooms. So I don't know what's going on. But all right, here's what Nancy Mace posted in response to this. I never thought we would need a sign for this, but women's restrooms are for biological women, not men. Which means that the men have to take responsibility for biological men who think that they're women or who believe that they're women. Like, why do we have to? If they want to go into your bathroom and they're Democrats who are in their bathrooms. All right, it's getting complicated now. All right, so she says it's biological. I don't know. And now she got into it outside the Capitol. Here's what it sounds like.
Here she goes. Here's Congresswoman Mace. Congresswoman Mace, can I ask you a question as you walk here? So the question is, with your piece of legislation about banning women from using...
100% yes.
My question to you is...
It doesn't go far enough. I'll be filing more bills.
You have said that it was created in response to Congresswoman-elect McBride.
100%. And
but should legislation be created targeted at one specific person?
It doesn't mention anyone in the legislation, but
you've said it was aimed at her.
No, I have said it's a result of this. I'm not going to allow biological men into women's private spaces. I will stand in the brink and stand in the way of anyone on the radical left who thinks that it's okay for a penis to be in a women's locker room or a bathroom or a changing room. Hell no. I am not going to stand for it. And the Speaker said it would be in the House rules package. If it's not, I'll be ready with a motion, a privileged motion to force a vote on this. This is not okay. I'm a survivor of rape. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. And I'm not going to allow any man in any female private spaces.
Now, Speaker.
End of story. And by the way, I'm getting death threats from men pretending to be women. Why is it that these crazy people, the insanity, the radical left, are willing to kill women over a man's right to be in a women's restroom?
Speaker Johnson has said he wants to treat every new member with the words dignity and respect. Forcing this congressperson to go into a male restroom, is that dignity and respect?
Forcing women to share private spaces with men is not dignity and not respect. And I'm absolutely going to stand in the way of anyone who thinks it's okay for a man to be in our locker room, in our changing rooms, in our dressing rooms, in women's bathrooms. And in fact, if you agree with that, you're crazy, because that's not okay. It's not okay.
Congresswoman,
Thank you, Congressman. We're going to peel away from this conversation, Kira. So a little bit of the context of what we were just talking about.
All right, so Nancy Mace on a tear, and she's pretty fired up. But like, men, we don't want unwell people in our bathrooms either. You know what I'm saying? Like, she just said that these are, and I'm not saying that all transgender people are unwell. Like, that's way too overbroad. But we have a bathroom problem because nobody wants to deal with rapists and abusers in their bathrooms. So I don't know what we're going to do about this. But all right, the House is figuring it out. Here's what the bill looks like in Congress. It says this bill from Nancy Mace is going to prohibit individuals from accessing or using single-sex facilities on federal property other than those corresponding to their biological sex. So this is federal property, and I think the first one was for Congress. Let's see. Yes. Prohibiting members of the House was the original bill. Saying allowing biological males into single-sex facilities like restrooms, locker, changing rooms, jeopardizes the safety and dignity of female members. And so therefore, the Sergeant at Arms is charged with prohibiting this from happening. A member may only use a single-sex facility that is corresponding with their biological sex. Pretty simple concept there. And I guess maybe they'll have somebody watching at the doors. But here, short title, in general, notwithstanding any other provision of the law, same thing. This would go to all federal properties now. So she expanded it. She said, oh, you want to come after me and say that I'm being a bigot or something? How about we just expand it to beyond the House of Representatives? Everywhere in D.C. and every federal building. The term biological sex means the following. Male or female. Female, here's a definition. The term female means an individual who has naturally had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilizes eggs for fertilization. That's what a female is. A man, the term male means an individual who naturally has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, or utilizes sperm for fertilization. All right? So if you were born with some leaning one way or the other, it's going to be decided, and we'll just make that decision, and then you can use the appropriate bathroom. Now, it doesn't apply when there's an emergency or when law enforcement is pursuing somebody, and if you have to stop and take a, rest, then you can use that bathroom regardless of your gender. So that's Nancy Mace driving this one forward, and we'll see how long this story stays at the forefront. I do think that there are much bigger issues, but Congress will settle this for themselves, it sounds like. We'll see if they'll do anything for the rest of the country, and if this issue will be at the forefront of Americans' minds. We'll see. Now, I don't have kids, and I don't have a strong presence in the schools and in these arenas, so you'll have to be my guide and let me know what you're seeing out there. But for the day, Congress is figuring it out for themselves. And here was Jasmine Crockett being extra Jasmine Crockett today and ranting about white men.
Is because you can then misuse words like oppression. There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me
J6ers
which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression.
What? White people were slaves all over the world. What are you talking about? And by the way, many black people were involved in the slave trade.
We didn't ask to be here. We're not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to... Was she brought over here on a slave ship or something? Unbelievable. I don't think so. Where was she born? All right, that's Jasmine Crockett being extra Jasmine Crockett, talking about white men, and you can see how oppressive the white men are, but white men have never been oppressed at all. So I guess, according to Jasmine Crockett. So I hope they keep this up, man. I hope this doesn't let up. We've been so excited about the electoral victory. We've been a little bit, concerned that maybe the Democrats will wise up and realize that everything that they've been sharing for the last 4 years has been a disaster. Turns out that's not happening at all. No self-awareness whatsoever, and we're here for it. All right, and so we got one final update, my friends.
And then we're going to see what you have to say about this. Once again, thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for joining us. We go live at this time every day, and we'd love to have you back here 5 days a week, and then Membo streams on Saturdays. But we've got one final update out of the Laken Riley case. Guilty, the verdict on the Laken Riley killer trial. He's been convicted of 10 counts. President Trump is celebrating. We've got the reading of the verdict here and then reaction from the New York Times, along with updates of what happened in Congress when Health and Human Services Director Xavier Becerra was hauled in front of the House and asked questions about hundreds of thousands of missing kids that have disappeared as a result of their transportation across the Democrats' wide open border. But a great verdict today, nothing that's going to bring back the loss of Laken Riley, and peace to the family. When we play this clip, you're going to hear the sobs and the tears in the room. Totally unnecessary death that should have never happened if this person would have not been in our country. Trump responded, said, "Justice for Laken Riley. The illegal who killed our beloved Laken Riley was just found guilty on all counts for this horrific crime. Although the pain and the heartbreak will last forever, hopefully this can help bring some peace and closure to her wonderful family who fought for justice and to ensure that other families don't have to go through what they have. We love you, Laken, and our hearts will always be with you. It is time to secure our border and remove these criminals and thugs from our country so nothing like this can happen again." Now, here's the verdict as it was read in court today, and you'll hear the judge announcing one by one all the way up through 10.
Count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty. I certainly will allow both sides to look at this if you want to do it. The next step is sentencing. I'm prepared to go forward with that now, or if either side suggests that you need a few minutes, an hour break or something to do that, then I'll certainly do that as well. Consider that. Sure.
All right, so they did take a break. You can see the verdict was read, 10 out of 10, guilty, all counts. When they came back, he got sentenced to life in prison. Life sentence for killing Laken Riley. And you like how the New York Times calls him a migrant, just a innocent migrant who was here to work the fields. Yeah, the sentencing came hours after a judge issued a guilty verdict. And obviously you can see scenes of the just horrific scene in the courtroom. A 26-year-old migrant from Venezuela was convicted on Wednesday. He was an illegal alien who was not supposed to be here. Killed and murdered Laken Riley. She was 22, attacked in February, running on a trail, University of Georgia. Entered the country illegally. Faced numerous charges. The judge was Patrick Haggard of State Superior Court. Found him guilty. It was a 4-day bench trial. They waived a jury trial. The judge, rather than a jury, decided the case. They did not want a jury because they probably thought they were going to lose the case immediately. On Wednesday, lawyers for the murderer said that their decision to seek a bench trial was based on concerns that a jury could not review the evidence dispassionately. Well, the judge didn't buy it either. For months, Riley's name was invoked by conservatives. Trump called Ibarra, the defendant, a monster, In a post on social media, Trump said, "We love you, Laken Riley. We love your family. We pray for you." Now, she was fast. She could have outrun him. But there's another suspect in this case who's taller and more physically fit. So they tried to blame it on someone else. Horrific case. And obviously, just the background is gruesome. So a little sense of justice there. Prayers for the Laken Riley family and for Laken Riley, and may she rest in peace. Now, elsewhere in the country, there was a hearing about immigration and about how Health and Human Services Director, Secretary Xavier Becerra, the man who is soon to be replaced by Health and Human Services incoming Director, RFK Jr., baby. Soon as Trump's in charge, brought his booty down to Congress, and he got asked about those missing 300,000 kids that they cannot find, that we know that they had at one point on a list somewhere, and now they're missing, gone with the wind. Thank you, Kamala and Democrats. So here is this exchange. Xavier Becerra, Health and Human Services, major position, being asked about the missing kids. How can you deliver health and human services when kids are being trafficked across the world?
Secretary Becerra, do your policies at ORR place priority on speedy placement of the unaccompanied child with sponsors, or taking care of their safety and protection once they've been placed?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. The safety and well-being of children in our custody is our #1 priority.
Well, so that's important to know, because your record indicates that biometrics for the sponsors were eased up there. The use of DNA, I'm going to read from your directive from March 22nd, 2021. Use of DNA is only used for the purpose of establishing biological relationships for purposes of sponsorship, and is not submitted to law enforcement personnel or run against law enforcement databases. Catch that last part? Not submitted to law enforcement personnel and not run against law enforcement databases. And to get this part, submission of DNA by the parent is voluntary. How in the world does that protect the child, the unaccompanied minor, when actually what you're doing, you're saying the parent, whether you submit the DNA, that's voluntary. So you're going to be taking whoever it is, the sponsor, their word.
They got to just...
So how does that protect the child?
It doesn't.
Chairman, thank you for the question. We use a number of tools to make sure we can identify the child and certainly do the background checks on anyone who wishes to be a sponsor. We always hope that we can get the most direct information about the care, the people who are wishing to sponsor these children. And we use, as you mentioned, a number of techniques, including fingerprinting and DNA on occasion when it helps us to identify
on occasion. And if you don't have the DNA and you don't have the fingerprints, how in the world are you checking the databases for the background? How are you vetting them?
We have a number of techniques that we use to make sure we're...
What are they?
They can include any number of things, such as, sometimes it will include fingerprints. It will include a direct interview with the individual. It will be a check on citizenship documents. It will be a...
How often do you use fingerprinting or DNA?
Again, it depends on the type of information we have to identify the individuals who are wishing to sponsor.
So let's read this one here. This is from Directive 10 days later.
All right, so we're going to fast forward on another clip because the audio is pretty aggressive on that one. But here's another exchange, much on the same topic. They say, what are you doing when it comes to unaccompanied children with sponsors? How are you protecting them to make sure that they're going to people who are legitimate sponsors, who are not going to just traffic these kids into some horrific situation?
I just asked the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, do you have a medical degree?
I do not.
You do not have a medical degree.
Okay, good. So RFK Jr.
Are you
doesn't
familiar with
either,
the Florida grand jury presentment that they did about a year and a half ago in 2023 in regards to unaccompanied alien children?
I'm somewhat familiar with it. I was briefed on it on many occasions.
Are you familiar that in that report, it revealed that children were pimped out by their aunt, which it turns out the aunt wasn't even related to the child, the so-called aunt. Are you familiar with that story that was in there?
There are a number of incidents that are reported in that Florida report. Some of them I can probably recall better than others. Some of them I would challenge and dispute. but that one I don't remember.
And do you remember the teenage girl that was in a house with unknown men with no private bedroom for her? Are you familiar with the sponsors that utilize a strip club in Jacksonville as an address for where this child, where a child should be settled?
Congressman, as I said, I don't have the information on that Florida grand jury report in front of me. I certainly can go back and take a look at it and try to get back to you.
He won't.
Are you familiar that the case managers are only performing home studies, or the case managers are only doing case studies or home studies in 4.5% of placements in Florida? Only 4.5%. In fact, discretionary home studies were 1%. Is that all you folks are checking up on?
They're not doing
that
that.
Are so vulnerable?
Congressman, thank you for the question. Congress, in passing the laws that apply to the unaccompanied children, said that home studies would be reserved for those children who came to us with circumstances that showed trauma or the need for additional
just following the law,
services.
man.
So by law, by statute passed by you in Congress, those of you in Congress in the past, we have the obligation to conduct these home studies only in those particular cases. We provide a home study.
So you decided to do the minimum.
No, that's
1%. That's what you
about to
said.
go there.
Okay, here's the law. That's all we're going to do. In the meantime, you got kids being placed in addresses like a strip club in Jacksonville, Florida.
Great. So, yeah, the law says when the kids come to us, you're like, what? The kid's going to come to you when they're being exploited at a strip club? They're going to call you and say, hey, I'm being exploited. Can you please come help us? I don't think so. Chip Roy also jumped in, and here's what that sounded like.
Are you familiar with Maria Gonzalez, an 11-year-old girl who lived in Pasadena, Texas? In August 2023, Ms. Gonzalez was allegedly raped and murdered by Juan Carlos Garcia Rodriguez, a Guatemalan national who appealed at the southern border as a UAC in January of 2023 and was 17 years old. A month later, HHS released Garcia Rodriguez to a sponsor with a criminal history and who previously had 2 other UACs in his care, failed to enroll them in school as required by HHS. How about the situation with respect to another individual, Kayla Hamilton? Are you familiar with Walter Javier Martinez? Martinez was a 17-year-old from El Salvador who appeared at the border as a UAC in March of 2022. Months later, in July 22, he raped and murdered Kayla Hamilton, a 20-year-old woman in Maryland. After Martinez's release from the border and before Mrs. Hamilton's tragic death, HHS released him to a sponsor in May of 2022. Despite Martinez having gang tattoos and an arrest record for illicit association with MS-13. Mr. Secretary, how can you credibly claim that HHS is working to protect these children? And by the way, children we're talking about in the order of magnitude of 400 and something thousand children, which you are dismissing that they are lost. Let me ask you a very specific question, Mr. Secretary. Can you account for the whereabouts of those 400 and something thousand children? The 320,000 that were put in the report by the Inspector General, the 85,000 that we've talked about before in 2023. Do you know where all of these children are and that they are safe?
Thank
yes
you for
or no?
the question, Congressman.
Congressman, as I explained the process, we get these kids when they are referred to us by the Department of Homeland Security. We then provide them with care while they are in our custody. We lose custody of those kids once we find a vetted sponsor with whom they can stay.
A vetted sponsor that rapes and murders the people that they're entrusted to? Because you issue a rule that doesn't even do the background check? That's what you think is appropriate care for these children?
Brutal. All right, so that's Health and Human Services. And he'll just sit there with this smug little smirk on. We're following the law. We're doing exactly what we want. They know what they're doing. They are changing the demographics of the country. They're exploiting people, humanity to do that. They're lecturing everybody else for being inhumane, xenophobic bigots, while they're the ones that are causing death, murder, mayhem, everything. And having our country be exploited by not only foreign aliens, but also the NGOs and the other governments who are facilitating the Great Invasion. And in the middle of all this, we have hundreds of thousands of children Think of that like the entire state of Wyoming, okay? It's like 3/4 of a state of kids. 400,000. They don't know where they're at. From official reports we read here through the OIG report. It's a sick operation that's happening. Fortunately, it's going to be coming to a close. President Trump is going to be taking office soon enough, and RFK Jr. is going to come in and replace this stuff, and it's going to stop, and it's going to stop quickly, and we're going to be here for it. Thanks for subscribing and joining us as our coverage continues. All right, my friends, it's been a beautiful live stream. Thank you so much for hanging. Thank you so much for subscribing and liking this video. Quick recap, if you just joined us late and you want to know what we talked about before, Matt Gaetz, big victorious day for him. There was a huge hearing today in the House of Representatives. Are they going to release this ethics report? Turns out not. The report is a joke. It's not even finished. And Matt Gaetz has already debunked this for us before he was ever even in contention for the Attorney General position. So definitely catch that first segment if you missed it, because Matt Gaetz is vindicated. He had a big victory today. And I think this is important for people to see, because this is an issue that's going to be evergreen until he's sitting in the AG's office. So we're glad that he's seeing some progress and the Republicans are not buckling under the pressure. Bunch of clips on that segment, including Haluna and Stinky Bang Bang Swalwell, in addition to Harriet Hageman and others. In our second segment, we talked about bathrooms, transgender bathrooms, and everybody's trying to figure out where people should go, and it's complicated. So in Congress, the newest transgender member will not be using the women's bathrooms. Yeah. And, okay. So they passed some, or introduced some legislation on that, and we'll see if Congress does anything more on this issue or if it trickles down to your local neighborhood and your local schools. The border is a disaster until it gets fixed in the incoming administration, but the Laken Riley murderer was found guilty, 10 counts, came out quickly, sentenced to life in jail, life in prison, and that's a semblance of justice for the Laken Riley family. We also had some great clips out of Congress that we just wrapped up with on how truly bad the border is. Fortunately, Xavier Becerra, the Health and Human Services Secretary, is going to be out of there soon enough. And my friends, it's been an amazing stream. And so now it's time to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us on the day. Thank you for supporting us with your donos, your super chats, your friendship, your fun comments, and all the things. We got F. Joe Biden is starting us off. And then, wow, all right. And then we're going to locals. What's going on? All right, so F. Joe Biden is in the House, says, I have a feeling that Trump has that list from the D.C. matter, and that's why everybody's going to vote in Matt Gaetz. Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen as many Republicans getting squirrely as I was expecting. We'll see what happens at the hearing, but it was a good day for Gaetz. Good day for him for sure. Corey Powell says, Christine Pelosi is, quote, curing ballots in California 13, and it has almost flipped today. Duarte's lead for the Senate falls from 2281 to 227 as she arrives. Wow. That's a good update, Corey. We haven't been following that one. Christine Pelosi's not running, right? That's just Pelosi's daughter. Good update, Corey. Thank you for that. Will Crump says, disgusting that Laken Riley DA refused to pursue the death penalty. Too worried about the impact that would make on the migrant population. Yeah, the death penalty is an interesting one. I saw some comments in the chat go by saying, oh, now we're going to have to pay for this guy our whole lives. And when was that in law school or was that before that? I mean, it's been ages since I looked into the numbers on this, but my understanding is that the death penalty is massively more expensive, right? If you try to pursue the death penalty against somebody, it's like an order of magnitude more expensive than keeping somebody in prison, like 10x more expensive because of the appeals and all the procedural hurdles that are put in place for the death penalty. And the death penalty, yeah, I've got some real troubles with the death penalty because I think that that life in prison, in many ways, is a harsher punishment in some sense. I mean, I think death is kind of a release from the actual punishment. Of course, burning in hell for all eternity is a much worse punishment as well, and you want to avoid that if you can, for as long as possible. But you understand there are some policy rationales for why the death penalty is not as useful in terms of costs, why it's maybe not as utilitarian in terms of penalties and consequence. And you might also make the argument that humanity is fallible, right? Mankind is fallible. So even though the death penalty makes sense in some cases, like you might say it does make sense in the Laken Riley case, if you use it as a standard and you set a precedent for eliminating a life using our justice system, you recognize that our justice system is fallible. And there is no doubt that we've killed innocent people utilizing the death penalty. And there's a principle in the law that you'd rather have 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent man be punished for something that innocent man didn't do. Do you want to sit, or do you want your justice system to sacrifice that one innocent man for the greater good? Like, do you just say, well, we're going to get 1,000 guilty people for sure, but we're also going to get one innocent guy, and we're going to kill all, he's going to go with it, right? Some justice systems, I think, would actually support that and just say, yeah, it's like, you might even think like the Romans, right? When they would go in and decimate a town, I think, right? Decimate meaning they would just kill 1 out of 10. Doesn't matter if you're innocent or not, you're just dead. So just deal with it. That's the consequence. So, right, there are penalties like that where you just say that the taking of human life is worth it. There are other situations where people have been killed that are not, shouldn't have been killed. So, complicated issue. On whole, I am opposed to the death penalty for those reasons, generally speaking. I also think humans make mistakes. I also think that, considering redemption is a thing. I think people can be redeemed. I think it would be a beautiful situation if, 20 years from now, this monstrous person finds Jesus or something, right? And has an epiphany, and maybe the Laken Riley family can have some peace in the future or something. I know that sounds maybe out of the realm of possibility right now, but I would hope that maybe there can be some peace and healing in the future out of this horrific tragedy. And I ultimately do hope that the family finds peace, that they can let this go, because it's a horrible thing to live with the pain of a loss like that forever. We don't want our grief to be all consuming and take away our life. Somebody else died in our lives, but we don't have to die too. In fact, they would want us to live and let those things go. So what is the right rehabilitative function for the victims? Does the death penalty bring them a sense of closure? I don't know. All important issues to think about. That's what, complicated issue. Glocky says, does anyone else think Trump paid a very expensive and competent private investigator go through every aspect of his nominees' lives, and that's why he's so confident in picking them, because he knows they have done nothing wrong? Trump definitely has the money to go and buy information from FBI brokers like the FBI, and was doing so to get around warrants. Makes me wonder what dirt he has on the people in the House and the Senate. Yeah, I think for sure he's using private investigators to vet his people. I don't think that he was using the FBI to vet his candidates, because the FBI is completely untrustworthy. Hey, Elf, what's up, Elf? Look at this, Elf. Thank you. 20 membos coming in. Look who's here. Thank you, Elf. Bringing in Girl of the Valley, Mike Middleton, what's up? M. Maroki. We got David Hicks, Michael Bruno, Brandy Clifton. We got One Dull Butterknife, Outlaw Josie Wales, Think and Repent. We got Critical Smoker, I'm a Red Bar Bandit, Irrelevant Old Man, Tend Her Heart, James Bevan, Grimm's Bar, Chelly Bell, Mark Stufer. We got Grifter Wannabe, Anthony Bray, and Evil Game Corner Reggie in the house. And lots of love for you, Elf. Look at all those loves. Amber, Elf, we love you, man. Thank you for that. 20 new membos. New friends, welcome aboard. Courtesy of Elf in the house. Hey, what's up? Ollie is bringing in Mercy Bells. Thank you, Ollie. Welcome aboard, Mercy. Crash says, Rob, here's a $50 tip. Crash, that's a nice one, man. Here's what Crash said for this nice tip. He says, all right, here's a comment, Rob. And he says, okay, euphemism. It's a mild or indirect word or expression substituted for one considered to be too harsh or blunt when referring to something unpleasant or embarrassing. Said, I've had it up to my eyebrows with the left's untruthfulness, hiding themselves from reality as sugar-coated candy. Reproductive freedom or reproductive rights is a classic example of their euphemisms. It is the epitome of a euphemism, substituting vile, repugnant behavior as an honorable, even laudable goal. Crash says, the actual word or expression which has been substituted for is simple, clear, and descriptive. It's called infanticide. When a couple engages in coitus, that's bang bang, for those of you who have facile minds like me. They are exercising their reproductive freedom rights. They have the right to have sex. When they abort a child, it is neither a reproductive right nor freedom. It is the mechanism to deal with the problem created by foolishly or wantonly exercising their reproductive rights, i.e. coitus, making bang bang, without consideration for what may be the ultimate outcome, a human baby, and the following resulting infanticide. Says Dr. Bernard Nathanson, OBGYN, personally presided over 60,000 abortions. In 1969, he co-founded the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, known simply as NARAL, because its old name and actual meaning was too offensive for the public at large. This is not an abortion diatribe, simply an example of the untruthful left and its willingness to lie about who they are. A majority of Americans has seen through their lies, MSM and Dems alike, and that majority will only grow larger in the days, weeks, and months and years to come. Great comment from Crash. Yeah, you see this a lot, and they do it with reproductive freedom or reproductive rights. That's one example. But and both sides do this. They call it, the Patriot Act, when they're going to come in and spy on you and seize your internal private communications. You're a patriot if you allow them to do that. It's not patriotic to allow your government to become dictators, technological dictators, at all. And we see a lot of this with the saving democracy stuff. Saving democracy means saving Democrats. That's all it means. And so, Crash, you're right about that. They're very good with their labels. They say things like, we have to save the planet or stop climate change. Which really what they're talking about is enslaving you into consumption limiting economic systems that make you slaves to them. Right? And they just are, well, we're saving the planet. No, you're not. You're enslaving humanity. Thanks. Thank you, Crash. Very nice dono and very much appreciate it. We've got this one that came in from Ravicus. What's up, Ravicus? Says, do you know if there is any active movements that are trying to repeal the 17th Amendment? If we get rid of the 17th Amendment, can we recall senators? No, I'm not aware of any active movements. I'm sure there are. But yeah, I mean, if we passed an amendment to repeal the 17th Amendment, then I'm sure we would deal with the senators who are appointed as a result. Ravicus, thank you. Knox says, happy Wednesday, all. Good to know these Gaetz informants treat bond conditions and probation as seriously as my clients do. Gosh, I know, Knox. You're like, could you imagine that? You're out. What is this? Oh, gosh. All right. Intercourse with clients, gross, says Knox. And she's sharing a photograph of a bunch of inmates. All right. So if you're on Locals, you have to join Locals to see that one. I don't know what we're looking at here. I don't know if there's an errant genital in there or something. Hey, what's up? Glocks is here. Says, I think I found my new lawyer. Hey, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. It's true. It's true. Stuff happens all the time. Do they have the evidence? Yeah, it's true. You may have done it, but can they prove it? Is the case. Hey, here's one. Lawyer says, all right, so why do you want this divorce, client? He says, well, everything was perfect, but she calls memes memes. Oh, that's a huge problem. Divorce immediately. Lawyer says, wow, okay, I'll get the papers. Not even going to charge you for this. It's pro bono on the house. She calls memes memes? No. Divorce immediately. More here. What's up? More here. Bringing in 5 membos. D. Martinez is here. Brandon Chafin. 2 steps, 1 steps in the house. Lori M. and Cheryl Wheeling Gifted membos courtesy of More Here. Bringing in More Here. We got this one from Stephen O. What's up, Stephen O? 5 membos. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for being a membo, bringing more in. Adam A. Invictum Lupus. We got Sandra MacArthur, Legion 307, and Biff Bifford in the house. Thank you, Stephen O, for being a membo. And I was joking about the genitals. I don't think Knox is going to post genitals. What's up, Stephen O? But thank you for checking on that. John McGarvey was zooming in, looking for genitals. Thank you, John. Crash says, Sean Spicer commented today that if the Senate stiffs Trump on his choice for AG, rejects Gaetz, DeSantis could appoint Gaetz to fill Rubio's seats, and in the Senate will have the disruptor in their bed, which would be a problem for the Senate. From Crash. Sean Spicer's fun. He's good to listen to. Dennis Petit, what's up, Dennis? Said, here's a prayer request. I've got a meeting at the bank this afternoon. If all goes well, I'll be debt-free by 6 p.m. I'm so excited I can barely put my ski mask on. You had me there until that last sentence. Well, I'm excited for you too. I think it's going to be a thrilling trip for you. It is going to be an exciting trip. Let us know how it goes when you get out of custody. You could be debt-free or you could be incarcerated for the rest of your life. Either way, I don't know. But you had me going there. I was like, well, congratulations. Wow. Ravicus. We are living in the most interesting times in our known history. So much is going on. From DEI to nuclear war to a brain-dead Biden presidency to AI to the extinction of mankind, potentially, or saving space race with Elon, saving humanity by relocating to Mars. What a time. You're right about this, Ravicus. And I was listening to a guy give a talk. He calls himself a futurist. He was part of the original development team from OpenAI. He spoke at Genius Network, and he was explaining where the future is going. And think about this just from a mechanical perspective. I was talking to my friends there about this. I'm like, just think about this. We already see these robots running around, moving things and solving things. They're going to be pretty much human capabilities pretty quick. I'd imagine a couple of years, they'll be pretty good. Let's say 80%, 90% functionality. So when the robots can build themselves, and when the AI can train itself and make those machines better, then you can just let it go, right? Once you get to a certain point, the machines build themselves. And then they maintain themselves, and then they replicate themselves. And then you can apply that aggressively in multiple domains. And once that happens, once that curve takes off, we're going to hit 88 miles per hour, and you're going to see some serious stuff. What's up? Saintly Beginning says, can you make the Matt Gaetz PDF available? Yes, I absolutely can. We'll upload it to our Scribed. Check out our Scribed. Search Robert Gouveia on Scribed. It'll be up there soon enough. And that's where it'll be. Saintly Beginnings. Hey, F. Joe Biden. What's up? Says, hey, Robert, nice shirt, LOL. Well, thank you. Yeah, this is the blue version. This is a blue shirt. It works. Thank you for the compliment, F. Joe Biden. Happy 9 months, my friend. Happy baby. Says, here's the issue. You only hear about men trying to be women and infiltrating women's spaces, not vice versa. Yeah, why is that, though? Yeah, I don't know. Is it because the other don't want to? Do transgender men want to go into, they do not want to go into men's bathrooms? Why is that? Spud says, I wonder what someone like Ilhan Omar has to say about transgender persons, and would she consider herself safe? Sarah would not be welcomed by our Muslim friends, says Spuds. It's interesting, Spuds. Yeah, that's why I think the Democrats should put it to a test. Do they want that happening in their bathrooms? The Democratic women in the Congress. I'd like to have them on record. They should vote accordingly. Ravicus says, so if I address a member of Congress, can I call them a baboon? You could. Is that not fitting and real? It might be both fitting and real. It might be both. Yeah, I don't know. Hey, Democrat Jamal Bowman demands Black Jedi lead the character in the next Star Wars movie. Is that real? Oh, because he got thrown out of Congress. Does he want to be the Jedi? Boopsy says, read that part again about the definition of male and female. The but for part, please. Thanks. Let's see. Male and female. But for. The term female means an individual who naturally has, had, or will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that produces eggs. So it's but for meaning you would have otherwise had those if you had not had some sort of interrupting event, like a developmental genetic or anomaly or historical accident. Something intervened and you don't have the ability to make eggs or produce eggs, but you would have if you didn't have a genetic disposition or a developmental problem, and so on. We got this one from Jesser Bob. Says, count 11, illegal entry into the United States of America. Guilty! Chief Vince says, I want to see a list of NGOs and all the money received. I think it would be a very instructive list. How much money has been sent their way. Shane, what's up, Shane? Shane Souza says, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and don't forget to click that all button so we never miss you again. Shlista says, Trump and Gaetz should not release the Diddy and the Epstein list at first. Instead, Trump should leverage it to pass the Trump agenda, then release it and prosecute those in Congress who are on it. I like it a lot. You better pass everything I want or I'm going to release the Epstein list. They pass everything he wants and he releases it anyways. I like it. Tex Rick says, this Gaetz corruption thing just spotlights the corruption. Congress and DC is another level as we're finally figuring out. Yeah, and the prosecutors are the worst, Tex Rick. They are searching. They're in search of a crime to smear their opponents. Just Rhonda says, I just watched the Laken Riley sentencing today. I just want to clear up the actual sentencing. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life without parole plus 27 years. And yes, it is far more expensive to keep someone on death row than to keep them for life without parole. I do consistent research on the death penalty. Yeah, Just Rhonda. Well, what's your take on it? Are you pro or against? What's your thought? Hey, Cliff Norman says, on Crockett rant, some reading and history of the observation of Robert Louis Gates would help. He said, the sad truth is that without the complex business partnerships between African elites and European traders and commercial agents, the slave trade to the New World would have been impossible, at least on the scale it occurred. Good book on the topics. Africans were not stolen. They were defeated in tribal wars, marched onto the Gold Coast, and sold into slavery by Africans. Yeah, there's a whole book on it. An African port in the era of the slave trade. Yeah, there's a much... The truth is much more complex than white people are racists and you know, want black people as slaves, all right? Which is what Jasmine Crockett thinks is realistic. Just Rhonda says, I also do not support the death penalty because I talk about wrongful convictions on my channel, and I've covered many executions of innocent men. Yeah, that should not be happening. They didn't deserve to die. Just Rhonda says, one more thing. Those calling for Laken Riley's killer to be deported, which he won't be, look at it this way. If we keep him in our prison, or yours, we will always know where he is. But if he's sent back to Venezuela, he'll likely never serve any time, and we will risk getting him back over our border. I feel better knowing where he is. Hey, and thank you for that, Just Rhonda. Good takes. Hey, Lyndon, welcome aboard as a new supporter. And new members, new supporters, grab the members only stream from this morning. We had a great members only stream this morning. And if you're on YouTube and you want to join us and become a part of the after party, grab the private Telegram only link, and we'll see you there on Telegram after this show wraps up. We also have, for members, we're training our new Rob bot, the AI system, which is trained on every single YouTube live video, public video that we've ever published. It's trained on over 44 million words so far. We're training it. And so check that out. If you're a membo, you can find the link in the membos show notes and show posts and test the AI, train the AI. It's a ton of fun. It's pretty wild. and it's getting smarter every day. Hey, what's up? And some of you guys are asking very interesting questions. Yeah, they're fun. Chief Vince says, NGO money, I bet over 70% are new startups. Yeah, I'm sure. Get that grift money while you can get that grift money. Heritage has a list of the NGOs. Wow. Who is helping Biden facilitate? Heritage recently uncovered that Catholic charities are doing a lot of it. Thank you, Knox. Wow. Heritage does good work. DeHook says, Rob, have you checked out the Trump store? They have some pretty sweet polos over there. They do. That's interesting. I'll have to take a look. Maybe they're my style. I'm very picky about my polos. Kind of a polo snob. But, you know, I do like Trump stuff. Especially that MAGA hat, baby. Hey, what's going on? We had some other donos. I saw this one from Knox says, like a bunch of white dudes in man buns run amok across Africa in their khakis, capturing the natives with a big butterfly net. I think that's what they think happened. Yeah. And Jasmine Crockett was apparently caught in one of them. Gosh. She's something else. Hey, Boopsy says, my problem is with the but-for developmental anomalies. Supposedly, we have some males like the boxer in the Olympics whose genitals were somehow deformed at birth, but the issue is not just genitals. I believe male and female is in the brain, the hormones, and the entire system. Some people have more testosterone or more estrogen, which can affect how you feel about yourself, but the chromosomes prove which one you are. Yeah, so I don't know, what were the chromosomes of that boxer? Do we know? And chromosomes can also be confusing because I think you can have XX, XY, but you can also have like XXY. Or like XXYY. So there are those other permutations. So there's always like an exception, right? They always come up with some exception. So how do you translate that into law? And I think you would say that this individual is this direction based on these indicia, and so that's the category to which they would belong. Yeah. Is this a big issue out there for you know, I know it's an issue that we talk about a lot, or we don't talk about it a lot, but I know a lot of other people talk about it a lot. Is this showing up in people's schools? Like if you're in a blue state, I imagine it's common, but if you're in a red state, are your kids experiencing this? Like, is this something they have to actually face? I'm sure it's much more prevalent these days. Boxer had female chromosomes. Interesting. Was not generating eggs, was XY. All right, yeah, it's complicated. All right, so interesting, Boopsy. Thanks for the take on it. Congress is going to solve it, no doubt. They're working hard on it. But that's the update. So, Boopsy, amazing. Thank you for the donos, my friends. Great comments. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up and head on over to Locals to debrief for a bit and see what's happening over there. We had some nice comments. Rob says, yeah, it's a political hit job, okay? The committee members hate Matt because he exposed them. Regardless, the report's going to come out, and it's going to get leaked anyways. I think that's probably right. Hey, Brutus, what's up? Says, Swalwell, go Fang Fang. He did. Brav Donatel, we got, says, I heard that the confirmation was a custom and not a law. That the confirmation was a custom and not a law. Do you know anything about that? No. The Constitution does say advice and consent. So the Senate does have a functional role there. Gustav says the wrap-up smear didn't work this time. No, it didn't. And it's good to see our friends on X. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by over there. But, my friends, okay, so we are going to leave it there on the day. Tomorrow is going to be Thursday, of course. We're going to be back here to get into it again. And we would love to see you come back and join us. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks for sharing the channel with a friend or family member so that we can see them back here when we come back. Thank you to the mods and our amazing meme smiths, Donut, John McGarvey, K Bean, Carrie B's on vacation. I see playing hookies in the house. And so we appreciate everybody being here. Thanks to everybody who participated today. Great comments in the chat and a ton of fun. And so we're heading over to Locals. Membos, we'll be back in the morning to get into it again. Otherwise, my friends, if we don't see you in the after party or on the Membo stream. We will be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, to get into this again. And in order to do that appropriately, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.